At the end of the day, my definition of entrepreneurship or of an entrepreneur is someone who is going to fix the problem, their own problem, 9 out of 10 times, before they wait for someone else to do it for themselves. Mm-hmm. In other words, when you see a problem, go and fix it.
Tell me about yourself, man.
Yeah. Okay. So, at the end of the day, there's a lot of different layers, but I am a soldier. I am a father. I am a husband. And of all those titles, though, my favorite, of course, is to be a father. I've got 3 girls. They're all adults now. 2 are married. One's pretty serious with her boyfriend, who we all adore him as well. And so, at the end of the day, who I am is most like anybody else you kind of hang out with. The only difference is I'm always moving. My wife makes fun of me. My daughters, they refer to me as a duck because I'm always ducking around the house, and I'll try to relax. And I'll try to focus on one thing, and then like the squirrel in the movie Up, it's like, choo. Or no, the dog in the movie Up, he chases squirrels. That's kind of like me because I'm always thinking about ways to improve what's going on. So your question was, tell me about myself. So I'm a soldier, I'm a father, I'm a husband. I've been a Texan since 1994. I grew up originally in Lexington, Kentucky, which we'll kind of get into when we talk about call signs. But throughout that journey, it's been fun trying to give back. It's been fun trying to learn. And I am, at the end of the day, the product of all those coaches, mentors, teachers along the way who saw something in me that they wanted to help fix or improve or nudge along. And most of the time, I was receptive enough to try to learn and grow along the way. And now when I turn back and look at the arc of my life, I'm like, most of it worked. I had lots of bumps and bruises. But by listening to them, by taking their advice, and by growing, I kind of end up in a spot in life where I have to pinch myself occasionally and be like, oh, yeah, people actually pay me to do what I love to do anyway. And so it's a cool spot.
That is very, very cool. So let's go back to Kentucky.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's near and dear to your heart.
Still is,
If you can just walk us through that. Like, so from Kentucky, where did you go next? Or even elaborate on Kentucky.
Yeah, well, I'll do more than just talk about my roots in Kentucky. I'm going to also weave it into the story of today.
All right.
And quite frankly, Austin, Texas. So all of my people on my dad's side, all the Kopsers, they, in large part, got from Poughkeepsie, New York, where my grandfather was during World War II, and he worked the tugboats. But after World War II, he's like, look, I got 2 kids and one on the way, which was my dad. I want to slow down. And so there was this local company in Poughkeepsie, New York, in Fishkill called IBM that was hiring. So he ended up becoming a plant manager for IBM. And he was not a manager, a maintenance officer. He was a maintenance tech inside. But he ended up becoming so successful that in the hard work that he did, that IBM said, well, we're going to open up a new plant in this place called Lexington, Kentucky. So my grandfather in the 50s moved with my brother, his brother, my uncle, and my older 2 uncles were already off in the real world. They graduated college, went into the Army and the Navy, and they were off. But my dad grew up in Lexington, Kentucky. Thankfully, when he was in college, he met my mother. They got married, and I therefore was born not long after. But what was neat about it is growing up as a kid, we were very middle class. There's plenty of stories I could go into about, people with money that we didn't have, or digging out coins from the back of the seats in the car to be able to pay the toll booth on the Bluegrass Parkway coming back, or even remembering certain meals we go out. I mean, like big occasions to go out, and the Ground Round was one of those really big occasions, or Max and Irma's. And those were big deals. And I remember that because we didn't really grow up with a lot.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I did. I had a little sister. And the 2 of us had, a mostly normal childhood growing up.
Yeah.
one little caveat, which is when my parents moved to the street in Chevy Chase, Lexington, where I grew up for most of my life, 2nd through 10th grade or 12th grade, my dad put his arm around me and says, "Son, you like our new house?" And I said, "Sure do, Pop. It's great." And he goes, "Good. Study hard in school because I just spent your college money on this house. So if you're going to go to college, you need to get an education."
Well, he
that's
invested
free.
it. He reinvested it in you.
He invested it in the house.
Right. Yeah.
So it basically was a nice motivator for me to say if I was going to go to college, I had to get it paid for, a scholarship. But as a kid, I was involved in a lot of sports. I wasn't the star of any sport. I was involved in a lot of activities, but I was drawn to those people, as my friends who were exceptionally gifted academically or exceptionally gifted civically. And I've said for my whole life, but I've really said it in the last 25 years, I've written about it, that people will be what they can see. And I was surrounded by a lot of really great role models. And, since you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most, luckily for me in life, I was the lower half of that 5, but they kept pulling me along until after a while, that started to bring me to the next level of my game, which got me into West Point. And by going to West Point, that kind of brought me to the next level of opportunity because 4,000 people all around you, 1,000 classmates, everybody is in sports. Everybody's in leadership.
How did you get to West Point? It sounded like you had some family members in the military.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of the cool part? They only served a couple of years after school, and they were not career military. The only reason why I went to a military academy is that the tuition was zero. Not the only, it probably shouldn't say it like that, but that was a driving force.
Absolutely.
We didn't have any money.
Right.
And so what I ended up doing was thinking that I was going to go to West Point for 4 years. I looked at all the academies, Army, Navy, and West Point, or Air Force, I should say, and fell in love with West Point because the focus really is on the individual. Navy puts a lot of emphasis on its ships, and to some degree its airplanes, and the Air Force is absolutely putting emphasis on its airplanes. But at the time, the Army had more boats, more watercraft than the Navy, and more aircraft than the Air Force.
That's right.
So a guy came to me and said, "Look, Joseph, if you really want to go to an academy, go look at West Point." And I did. And he said, "Before I get there, look at what all of our statues and monuments are, at least what they're in tribute to." And they were all to people. MacArthur, Patton, Eisenhower. And I just fell in love with that because at the end of the day, I believe, and I still believe, that it's all about people and the relationships between people, and it's down to leadership. And so that's what inspired me to go to West Point, despite the fact that I went Super Bowl weekend of my senior year. It was so cold. The air coming off the icy Hudson River was hitting me in the face, and the snow and the sleet were coming sideways. And my dad was like, "Come on, it's cold. We got to go." And I turned and looked at him and I said, "I got to go to West Point." And he goes, "You're going to come back up to New York where we all came and left to go down to the south where it's cold, where it's warmer?" And I said, "Look, it is so hard here, physically, academically, and weather-wise too, that if I can make it here, I could probably make it just about anywhere."
Did you have family still in New York?
I did have a few cousins, but specifically my Uncle Fred, my late Uncle Fred, and Aunt Carol. They lived across the river. He was career IBM his whole life. And so it was really cool to have that yin and the yang of Kopsers that were up northeast in Poughkeepsie, in New York, and then the next group of Kopsers that moved to Kentucky, and now we've got a whole new group of Kopsers that are here in Texas. But the cool little bridge between the two is, so after my grandfather helped build the IBM Lexington plant, and that became successful, 50s, 60s, 70s time frame, IBM said, "Well, we're going to build our next plant. We're going to get in this thing called computers." And they landed that plant right here in Austin, Texas, which we now mostly know as the space where the domain is. There's still a big IBM footprint, but it used to be 10 times the size. And one of my dad's cousins, who did go work for IBM, ended up being a part of that plant as well. So, the expression is IBM, I've been moved. That applies to a lot of my family members, and some also helped set up the IBM plant in Boulder. So anyway, it's just a cool, circle of events and how life works.
Are you a student of history? I mean, was that your favorite in college or high school? I mean, just history sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, so it kind of goes back to when I was in the 4th grade. So that year for my birthday, because my birthday is 2 weeks after Christmas, And so my parents always combine the two together. You know, your listeners and viewers that have a birthday close to a big occasion will know that you just get them lumped together.
Yes, yeah.
But that year they scrounged together and bought an airline ticket for me to go to Washington, D.C. to see another uncle of mine, Uncle Robert, who, by the way, in his 90s is still alive. And Uncle Robert worked for the State Department. And he took me all around, because it was between Christmas, New Year's of my 4th grade. He took me to the White House. He took me to the U.S. Capitol. He took me to the Pentagon, back when you could still take an escalator up into the middle of it. Right. And I just fell in love with country then. So that's second, this is 4th grade. Then you get an opportunity to go to West Point, and that just kind of instills even more that sense of duty on our country. And then, so for me, I thought I was going to be a 5 and fly, which was the expression for do your 5-year commitment and fly into the private sector. Right. But no, I did 20, absolutely loved it. I may have even done more than 20 had it not been for Ride Scout and the opportunity to go into entrepreneurship that occurred near the end of my Army career.
So you get into West Point, and when you graduated, what did you assess into the career field?
Well, great question. So I was a nerd in high school. I loved math, science. So I actually wanted to be an astronaut, which is ironic that I went to Army, but only after I found out that a lot of astronauts, in fact, even on the first Apollo mission, one of those was a West Point grad on that mission. But so I ended up becoming an aerospace engineer. So I studied math, science, and physics and all that about airplanes and rockets.
Right.
And it was hard. Got through because of a lot of classmates that kind of pulled me through, just like growing up. However, I was really drawn by Patton and MacArthur and Eisenhower. None of them were aviators because it didn't really exist back then as much. So I was drawn to the cavalry, and I ended up branching into the cavalry, which Army folks will tell you that's really armor, but a cavalryman will say, no, it's cavalry. A little bit different, but I've always been a little bit different. And so here I am, I'm this computer nerd aerospace engineer, goes to Ranger School and then goes into a cavalry unit. It was kind of funny. When I got to my first assignment, somewhere along the way, somebody found my senior thesis that had been published in Armor magazine, which was a tank-carrying glider. Because at the time in the Armies in the early 90s, we didn't know if we'd need tanks anymore. Right. Ironic. Right. Because we couldn't deliver them to a battlefield. So my thesis was to design...
Throw a glider on it?
Yeah, was to design a glider big enough and heavy enough and secure enough to be able to carry a tank, an M1 tank. So anyway, so I show up to my first unit. Somebody sees it in Armor magazine. So what do you do to any brand new second lieutenant? You got to make fun of them for something. So they ended up calling me Glider Boy for the first year or two. But, if you're going to make fun of me for being a nerd, I guess there's worse things they can make fun of me for.
Well, being an Army guy, I'll tell you that Armor and Cav are brilliant tacticians, and they understand not just the tactical, but the operational and even the kind of the strategic impact.
It's funny you say that. I agree that the Armor, especially cavalry branch, because for a number of reasons, they're really into doctrine. And for viewers that don't know what I mean necessarily by doctrine, but it's the language of your industry and your profession. In this case, it's the Army. And I had several bosses that were amazing. Robert W. Cohn, the late Robert Cohn, who was my first real squadron commander. He had a couple of fantastic S3s and XOs that worked for him. One of them was Abe Abrams, son of Tank, Abe Abrams, and meaning that his dad, the tank, was named after, for folks that don't know that reference. And Abe was doctrinal to a T. He knew Army doctrine inside out. When he spoke with precision, and I always thought that was fascinating. And then I get Paul Funk as our S3.
Yeah, he's right up the road
He's
here.
right up the road.
That's right.
Yeah, and Paul Funk also understood Army doctrine and I'll never forget, I was a young lieutenant out in the field, and middle of the night, we just finished a mission, and we all gather around the stump, we got a light source, and he starts with this little whiteboard with his magic marker laying out the 7 steps of engagement area development. And here I am, the second lieutenant. My mind is blown away that there's so much precision in what, to a layperson, to an outsider, thinks is just a bunch of madness. Right. It's no different than a football play.
That's right.
Or a basketball play.
If you don't know what's going on.
If you don't know what's happening, there is actually a method to what looks like madness. And so I fell in love with Army doctrine and just really everything about the professional soldier. And it was a blast.
Did you have aspirations of just like you knew you were a careerist at that point?
Well,
coming from West Point and then
so
started
two
getting into
things
it?
were going at once. So not only did I know I loved the Army, but I also met my wife on the very first day of my very first assignment in El Paso, Texas. I mean, when my mother found out, she's like, "You're gonna marry," like we got engaged not long after, "You're gonna marry the first woman you ever met?" And I said, "Mom, you got to meet these women in Texas. They're
There's
fantastic."
something. My wife is from El Paso, Texas.
East side,
My
west
parents,
side?
All the she is a Northeast girl.
Okay, yeah.
My folks grew up in El Paso. I mean, I'm a first generation American, so
Yeah.
they landed in El Paso.
There you go. It's a
Sweet,
cool town.
sweet home, great town.
Cool town. Go see it if you haven't been there. But what was cool about it was...
So we have that in common. We both met
heck
our
yeah.
wives there in El
Yeah,
Paso.
so meet Amy. We started a family very quickly. I was referring to my daughters earlier. And so two things were going on about my Army career. One is I loved the Army, but then I also loved the Army family stability. Now, mind you, we got married in 94, and this is 7-8 years before the war on terror and all that. So there was Army training and there was deployments, but the deployments didn't affect us. Like I didn't do intrinsic action or I didn't do Bosnia. So for the most part, it was just long training events.
Right.
But that stability I thrived in. Absolutely loved it. And the people, of course.
It's a small, big town that is there, and it is probably that the culture coming from a border town that also that there in El Paso, we could go and train and still know that the family
roll out the back
that's
gate,
right.
and then you have one of the single largest maneuver areas in the free world. When you count Doniana, when you count White Sands Missile Range.
I've been out there.
Yeah.
I can name the Oryx. Like, oh, that's Bill. That's George. The Audads. Oh, look out here.
My first experience with that training ground actually came when we were there for Ranger School. So this was about 6 months before.
That was the last phase of Ranger School.
Yeah. So I was there 94. I think they did 1 or 2 more classes, and then they shut off Ranger School.
Did you airborne insert into there?
I would have, but I was injured coming out of Derby phase because I had these 2 quarter-sized blisters on the back of my heels because this idiot trains up for Ranger School all through Fort Knox, dismounted armored scout course. I felt like I
broke
was
yourself
ready.
down. That's right.
Oh, no, it was worse. I actually built myself up. I was ready to go. And then the night before leaving for Ranger School, I said, well, gosh, I think I've really done something to my boots. Let me put some extra insoles in my boots. And instead of having boots that were like socks, I raised my heels just a little bit with these new insoles. Idiot move. Absolutely the dumbest
Threw your
move.
whole thing
Through just that little tiny difference started rubbing on my heels. And there's a friend of mine that I met several years later who was in that class with me. And he honestly says he has no idea how I made it through Ranger School because when they pulled my socks off in these 2 quarter-sized bleeding blisters, the medic should have not let me go, but I begged him. I was like, please, I did not work this hard to leave because I put insoles in my boots. That's the only reason why I didn't jump into the desert phase because I needed some time. But I did a couple jumps after that.
Yeah.
So I'm a 7-jump chump. So 5 in airborne school and 2 in Ranger School.
That's great. Let's go back to your call sign in Kentucky. How did that evolve?
So the call sign actually started in El Paso, and it started at a bar called Pistoleros, which if you've ever been on the west side, they used to do in the 90s, they did live bull riding. I don't know if you remember that place. Anyway,
Pistoleros.
Very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Is that like off Trans Mountain Road?
No, back further.
Donovan?
So if you, it's more towards. So if you're coming around the mountains on Mesa, and then near like where Executive is, then turn left and go all the way down. You're almost in New Mexico.
Yeah, I know
right
exactly. Yeah, I know. Okay, I know the
So
road.
there was a
Executive, because my
stretch-
grandparents live. We used to exit Executive, which is really close to UTEP. In that way.
Right. It's only a couple stops more. So we're at Pistoleros, but I'm with my girlfriend's father, Alan, a Vietnam helicopter pilot, Silver Star, badass. And I'm with my girlfriend's brother, Andy, who is ROTC at the time, or about to graduate, or maybe he was a second lieutenant at the time. So I'm with all my Army buddies, plus their older brother, Greg, who now lives here in Austin. So I'm with all my people, plus my girlfriend, Amy, soon-to-be wife, and it's karaoke. and Alan, my father-in-law, goes up to fill out our names. Now, we had been having fun. We were at Aaron's before that.
Oh, I know Aaron's. Aaron's is still alive today.
So,
That's right.
So he goes up to sign us up for a song, and he knew my name was Joseph, and he knew I was from Kentucky, and, nickname used to be like Bluegrass or whatever. So he's up there, and I can just see the wheels grinding now after a day of carrying on, having a good time. He probably came, he's like, Joe, who cares? I don't remember. And he goes, Joey B. And so when the VJ, the karaoke DJ, calls us up, it's Alan and Joey B. And I was like, what the hell is Joey B? No one in my entire life has ever called me Joey. Literally nobody. But here he is making up a name because he couldn't remember my real name. And so he came up with Joey B. It stuck. And Joey B has been my go-to karaoke name, used it on cruise ships and bars and wherever I am.
Joey B.
So if I have to come up with a call sign, I guess it has to be Joey B.
All right, so now that you broke out and opened the karaoke box, you usually, karaoke guys have 3 songs, their go-to songs.
Yeah.
What are those? Because everyone wants to know.
Well, first of all, I can't sing.
That's why they're dialing into this, just to get that.
I can't sing. I have no pitch, no tone, but I love the idea of being, especially, you and I know each other. I'm always on stages. I'm helping with events. I'm an MC. Yeah. Like, I love the stage, and I love being a part of it. I just can't sing. So my go-to songs really don't matter because whatever I do, I mess them all up. There are a couple of Beatles songs, Twist and Shout.
Okay.
That's just too
easy.
One. Yeah, you just go to Twist and Shout. But the problem is, as I get older, my voice doesn't even have the range.
Was there a movie where that was?
Well, there was another. There have been a lot of Beatles movies.
Ferris Bueller.
Okay, so in Ferris Bueller,
yeah, that's right.
During the parade, during that,
yes,
it's like
Chicago.
the German festival parade or whatever, Oktoberfest. He's singing "Twist and Shout."
Right.
There's that. Friends in low places. I mean, I literally, if I pulled up my phone right now, I have a list of 30 songs, because what I do is I'll get into the karaoke bar, usually, like I say, on a cruise ship. And as people are doing songs, I'll kind of tick them off, be like, can't do that one, can't do that one, can't do that one. But for me, it is less about the singing, because I can't sing, and it's best personified in a story once. So Amy and I are on a cruise ship. It's one of these long transatlantic. So you take off from Europe and you come to Florida, and it's like 7 days at sea. For an Army guy, it's kind of unsettling. You don't see land for 7 days. But we love it. I love it. My wife and I, we love it because you get into a routine. And one of those routines is the karaoke bar. And there's some pretty serious karaoke people.
Oh, I know. Like, people will come up to you and say, this is the song, and or they'll bring you, back in the day, the CD, and they would tell you, I want this level here, that level here. It was like very, very, very prescriptive.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know any of that. Like, when sometimes they'll even ask, in what key?
Right. That's exactly
and
right.
I'm like, I don't know.
What?
Yeah. So anyway, after about third or fourth night, we happened to be in the lounge before going down to karaoke, and this older couple whose husband was a very serious karaoke guy. He could do Frank Sinatra. He could do everybody. So she comes over to my wife, and she's kind of over my left shoulder there. My wife's right here. And she puts one hand on my wife's shoulder, one hand on mine. She says, now, dear, looking at my wife, now, dear, you do know your husband can't sing. And Amy's like, yes, we know. And everybody in their talking circles laughing. Like, she's like, I know, I've been trying to tell him for years. And I was like, I know I can't sing. But then she paused, and she kind of leaned in, and she says, but he is an entertainer. And so not only was that reinforcing the fact that I'll now continue to sing karaoke, and feeding the beast is not anything my wife wanted to have happen at that moment, but it speaks to something later that's continued to help me in life, which is it is less really about your talent. Like, I have no musical talent. And it is less about your actual academic aptitude or intelligence, because there are lots of people smarter than you and me. But where my successes come is I've just tried to have a good time, and I tried to enjoy the moment of wherever I am. And I believe, and the track record continues to indicate that maybe it is working, that if you generally try to be a force for good in the world and try to find the good in people and the fun in moments, that life's going to kind of work out. Like, I've listened to some really fabulous singers who get up there, stand there with the microphone, don't move. They almost look scared, but they're fabulous singers. I wish they would just relax, because they'd probably have a much better time. So,
And it's contagious, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think the fact that you have the self-confidence to know your limitations and still kind of cross a barrier and be vulnerable for a minute, that's contagious.
but that is the key. Karaoke is not a singing contest for talent. If you wanted to see real
Right.
talent, you go to a show. Occasionally, really good singers will participate in karaoke, and you can tell they're good or they're semi-professional, they did it before, and they love it, and the crowd loves them. But I also enjoy the fact that the crowd really cheers on those that have no talent, but they love the fun and the entertainment. And that speaks to teams and leadership. And in some ways, we can even tie it back to entrepreneurship, which is, and I've found this in my own investing philosophy, and a lot of the people that I know that I'm LPs in their funds, they like to bet on the person
Absolutely.
rather than necessarily the idea or the technical aspect of what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, if you find someone that enjoys what they're doing, is willing to learn and grow, you can work with that person. My wife wishes I could learn and grow in the karaoke space, but I just kind of always go back to what I love. And she's done a great job of finding some great songs for me to try to learn. But that's the other problem, is I don't even know the lyrics to songs. Thank goodness they have the screens.
Yeah.
But even with the screens, I still screw it up.
There's an old Army buddy of mine that actually bought a karaoke machine, and with his young kids, the subtitles to the song, he saw a bump up in their reading because of that, and because they found enjoyment in singing the songs that they enjoyed singing, but they were reading a lot better.
Yeah.
And so he really put that into practice
That's a pretty cool
to help
technique.
them out. Yeah.
My kids are similar in some regard, which is they all three have this ability to pick up lyrics and songs, and it's something I'm quite jealous of, that they can hear a song a few times and then know all the lyrics.
Right.
And I'll sing Beatles songs I've known my whole life, and occasionally I'll still screw up.
There's so many memes about that where people are singing their own version of the song.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to, you graduated West Point, you're in El Paso, you had a phenomenal Army career. I think, what was the highlight of your career? And was it one assignment, one instance of that? And I know there's multiple highlights,
sure.
but just one that really stands out.
Well,
for
I mean,
you.
we can break it down into people or places
Yeah.
or things. It is hard to beat the feeling of contribution of being a part of a high-performing team in combat. I mean, so my time with 1-9 Cav, and then my time with the 2nd Cavalry and 2-7 Cav in Mosul, I mean, it's the highest level of your game, meaning the Army profession.
You're in the game.
You're in the game. It is not a training environment.
Exactly right.
Real lives are at stake. Life and death matters. When you screw something up, it has implications. And that cauldron, if you will, that stress, that constant stress, just takes most people, not everybody. Some people crack, and we got to help those folks that do. But it takes people to a level of growth that I feel like, and I'll be forever indebted for the chance to serve my country. So to answer your question in the first regard, I would say that. But there are other really amazing assignments. My second to last assignment in the Army, I get to work as a special assistant to George Casey, who is the Army 4-star running the entire Army. I mean, he sat at the same desk that MacArthur sat at. He sat at the same desk that so many of our Army chiefs of staff over the years sat at. I mean, that's living history. And I'm in the office of the Chief of Staff of the Army. It's hard to even put words
I know.
when you walk into the room and there's an original Norman
I
Rockwell.
know exactly what you're talking about. It's just this. I've been in the same office, and it's just like you try and remain cool, but you're sitting there.
I was nerding out big time.
That's exactly right.
So those kind of assignments were special. I loved my 5 years teaching. So I got to teach for 3 years at the Department of Social Sciences at West Point. Loved it. I got to teach for 2 years at the University of Texas, running Texas Army ROTC. I mean, at the end of the day, all 3 of those assignments kind of, are reflections of who I am. You asked that question up front. Who am I? What am I about? So service to country, that was the times in combat in 2004 and 2006, 7. There's that. Then there's also student of history, mean, to work in the E-ring of the Pentagon with the Army Chief of Staff and to see all the VIPs and all that, like, I am still at the end of the day an 8-year-old kid with my Uncle Robert when I was in, the 4th grade, going through and seeing all this stuff. And now here I was working and living there. So, but then at the same time, that those 5 years teaching also were formative in my experience, because at the end of the day, what do I love to do? Coach, teach, mentor. And whether it's Joey B karaoke on a stage or Professor Kopser, Captain Kopser in front of a classroom, or now today, I speak to groups and do a lot of paid speaking in front of audiences, whether they be corporate or boards or different groups. And for me to be able to give back, because at the end of the day, that's what I think teaching really is it's giving back to build that bench, that next generation. Because as I said up front, I am the product of all those coaches, teachers, mentors that invested in me. And so for me, I'm giddy that I get to, I have hopefully play some role in somebody else's life as they aspire to do the things they want.
You have, and I don't know if anybody, hopefully those that are listening will go and find out more about you. And you are one of the pillars that I've seen in my growth here now in Austin.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All the things that you just said, and it's genuine. I think it's hard to convey the genuineness of what that is. And that's part of what I want folks to really get out of this conversation is that it's not for show. It's not for personal advancement. You just nailed it. I want to contribute. I want to coach, teach, and mentor, especially because those have provided and invested in you in that way.
Yeah.
And so you have. And this is my way of saying, man, thank you, because your level of inspiration to me, even what I'm doing here, that, hey, you know what? I can leave the military and still find myself, be able to contribute and give back. And so I think
100%.
you are continuing to do that. Let me get back to Austin and Texas.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've been here in your Army career, great. And it sounds like you were asked to come back and teach at the University of Texas.
I asked to come to teach at the University of Texas.
Tell us that story.
So, I'm in my 18th career in the Army, and my 2 years working in the Pentagon were coming up, and they asked the question, what do you want to do next? And I already kind of knew that I wanted to build Ride Scout. So for viewers that don't know, Ride Scout, a mobile app for your phone to organize all your transportation.
Is that where you met Craig?
I met Craig freshman year at West Point. 35
you're
years
classmates?
Ago. We're classmates.
Oh, man, I didn't really read that. Okay.
Yeah. So we've been in business together, and there's a photo that, I don't know if we can link to it on the show notes, but there's a photo of Craig and me and another buddy, Jason Dempsey, when we were literally selling West Point as a salesman, as a recruiter, while we were students and cadets there, to high school students. So there was this club called the Cadet Public Relations Council.
Okay.
And you would, as a bonus for going to recruited high schools, you get 2 or 3 days of extra.
Of leave.
You leave. So we're taping this on the Friday before next week's Thanksgiving. So we would be leaving today from West Point, not having to spend those next 3 days.
Right.
So we get time Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the next week to go to high schools. That's how long.
In your hometown, usually, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So that was 92, 93. So Craig Cummings and I have been in business for over 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah. He is definitely a brother from another mother.
Definitely.
Anyway, so I got distracted. What was the question?
No, it was like, how did you get to Austin?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So,
and I'll make sure everybody knows it's Craig Cummings and
Yes.
expand upon that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
another topic in itself.
Well, so here I am in the Pentagon. I'm 5 miles away from where we lived in North Arlington, 5 miles from the Pentagon. I could bike. I could drive my own car. I could take the bus. I could take the metro. Amy could drop me off. I could ride with some friends. No matter what combination or permutation of rides I did, there was always a trade-off. It was either slow, or there were lots of connections, or there was a long walk from the parking lot. That's what I think is so funny. My house to the Pentagon parking lot, the drive was about 15, 20 minutes with decent traffic. The walk from my car to my office, the Pentagon parking lot, and the Pentagon is so large, was another 20 minutes. I mean, that kind of stuff. So anyway, as an engineer.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. So here in the back of my brain, I'm an aerospace engineer, and I'm thinking there's got to be a way to, optimize these possible combination. So what if Amy just dropped me off, not at the Pentagon parking lot, but at the front door, or maybe I took a bus, whatever. I did this big spreadsheet looking for the best solution. Then I was like, why am I looking for a spreadsheet to do it? Surely I'll just look on the interwebs and somebody's already done this route planner. Hadn't been done. Google was just beginning to do maps. And for your viewers, this is before even Uber and Lyft. This was 2009, 2010 timeframe. And I'm starting to think about how to organize this world.
Were you frustrated at some point? Like, it sounds like,
Frustrated. I would be in my uniform at the end of my street near a bus stop. Cars are passing me on Glebe Road, for those that know, waiting for the 23 bus, I think it was, and they'd have a Pentagon sticker. I'm an Army guy in uniform. They're just passing right past me because I'm like, we're going to the same place. So I thought, surely there's a way to find people going my way. So that was actually the original name of Ride Scout, was Going My Way. I was trying to figure out a way to signal to those people that I too was going to the Pentagon.
Was slug line still a thing back then?
Were absolutely a thing. So for those of you who don't know, a slug line was just people who wanted to ride the HOV lane. Let me rephrase. People that didn't drive in their cars.
Right.
They wanted to ride with
Extra
people
passengers.
who did drive with their cars, because the people that drove their cars wanted a passenger to go in the HOV lane. Sounds foreign to people, but I used that concept with the fact that then phones were starting to have GPS in them. And it sounds so funny when we say it, that phones didn't have GPS, but they did start to have GPS. And I thought, again, what if you married up the GPS in your phone with the concept of slug lines, with this whole new thing called GTFS, the General Transit Feed Service, which at the time was called the Google Transit Feed Service, because Google was starting to optimize bus routes. I just put them all together, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I was en route to come to Austin to teach Texas Army ROTC. I'm talking about this idea on the back porch of my buddy Jason's house. Craig overhears me, and Craig turns around and goes, "What did you just say you're building?" I said, "Oh, it's a route planner tool. It's going to do this, that, it's a spreadsheet." Da, da, da. And he goes, "We're going to turn that into a business." I'm like, what do I know about building a business? I'm in the Army. And again, go back to that discussion about Army doctrine that we talked about in the very beginning with learning from those bosses that spoke Army. Craig spoke business, and he says, "Don't worry. You just take this energy for this idea you have and this enthusiasm. You keep going in the direction of building it, and over time, if there's got some legs, I'll help build the company around you." And that's exactly what happened. I get to Austin, Texas. At the time in 2011, not as many tall buildings, but at the time in 2011.
You've actually seen it. It's
oh, yeah.
Really,
literally.
really good. Yeah.
At the time, they said you got to do one of two things. You either get a mountain bike or you start a company. And I already had a mountain bike. So I'm like, well, then I guess I have to start a company. So I'm going to try to build out Ride Scout. And when I was surrounded by, even then, the number of entrepreneurs and founders, and mind you, this is before places like the Capital Factory were really in existence.
Yep.
Tech Ranch was one of the few actual incubators of its kind that were around. Microsoft had one up by North Domain. And so I just started one beer at a time, just like we're doing right here. Cheers, by the way.
Cheers, yeah.
Thanks for having me out.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
One beer at a time, I'd sit down with people and ask them, how did you build your company? What is an entrepreneur? How did you figure this out? So what I was doing was getting them to teach me the doctrine of business, like I learned the doctrine of Army. And so much so, I finally went to a guy, and you may know him, Dr. Johnny Butler at McCombs. So he's a Vietnam veteran. He was teaching a course at the time on entrepreneurship, and I just cold called.
Wow. Yeah.
Walked into his office and at McCombs and said, "Look," and I was in uniform. I was like, "Look, I don't have time to like get a degree. I'm retiring next year, but I have this idea for this Ride Scout thing," and I kind of described it. And he goes, "Well, how can I help?" And I said, "Well, can I just sit in the back of your classroom?"
Yeah, audit. Yeah.
And he's like audit it? And I'm like, not even really audit. I'm not even going to do the readings. I'm just going to, in my free time, come over, sit in the back of your class, and any word I don't understand, I'll Google it and figure out what it is. And then if I really don't understand, then I'll go read about it. And when I realized, within weeks, is that business has its own doctrine, its own acronyms, its own rules. But leadership and teamwork is universal. So I said, well, I know leadership and teamwork from the Army. I had a lot of great bosses, mentors, and platoon sergeants that taught me that. Why don't I take those learnings, combine it with what Craig and others were doing to help me understand business, and out of that came Ride Scout.
Was Craig here in Austin?
No, he was still in Washington, D.C. Wow. In fact, when we were launching in the spring of, I guess it'd be the summer of 2013 into the fall of 2013, I literally lived in Craig's basement in North Arlington Monday night through Thursday evening or whatever for about 6 months. Lived in his basement. And then the success of Ride Scout started to take off. We hired some great teammates, and it just kind of took off. And then Uber and Lyft got big, and then that took off. And that's when Mercedes said, all right, Mercedes and BMW and Ford, all these car companies, like, we've got to have some of these technologies. Big time. And so they acquired.
Because it's not as easy as connecting it in there today. Now you're leveraging Apple Play and Android, right?
I mean, when I tell the early days of Uber and Lyft did not exist. That's what's so hard for people. Sometimes I tell this story because, of course, Uber and Lyft exist,
right.
But not then. So after the acquisition, Craig is still in North Arlington. And what's so great about these granite walls, limestone walls that you have here at Q Branch, for the viewers, the Ride Scout offices.
I was just going to say.
Yeah. We're literally right down the hallway. Yeah, we were on the second floor, but we were right down the hallway, which is why when your team reached out to do this interview, I said, especially if we can do it in the building.
Yeah.
What was it called? Hair Grow? Is that the name of the
Henning Row.
Yeah. So I was like, this is awesome. So it's, again, full circle for me.
That to me was inspirational, when I was looking for a location, that most companies just in the singular building have found and exited success. Your company came right out of the gate. I think we did a South by Southwest, and somebody said, hey, this is where Ride Scout was. Everybody that comes up usually says, hey, wasn't this company here before?
We threw some really big parties back then. We had a lot of fun.
And so, but you're successful in that way, right? You've worked hard. Canva, another successful company that launched. Somebody else said, I forget the name of the company, $1 billion exit in some capacity. So there's just something that it's contagious in that way.
Well, it goes back to so many of the themes we've been talking about today. People will be what they can see. So just as I needed someone like Craig Cummings and all the other entrepreneurs of Austin to help coach, teach me, to show me what entrepreneurship looked like, those early days of trying to chase down Brett Hurt and get time on his calendar, and Josh Baer and Bob Metcalf, and just all these folks that had already been there, done that. That was what I needed to do.
And to be accessible, I think, in that way.
That's what's so cool about Austin.
That is magical about Austin.
I was doing an event the other night for veteran entrepreneurs. You remember the old Bunker Labs? It's now evolved. And the Institute for Military Veteran Families acquired Bunker Labs, and now it's under a new format. And I was co-hosting the event the other night, and somebody walked up to me afterwards and said, what is it about Austin that it's so accessible? It's like L.A., the Bay Area, New York. It's like you reach out to somebody and you just never hear from them again. But Austin is unique in that we're still small enough of a town that you still can get access to all these heroes of ours. So I don't know what it is.
That's what drew me, was the accessibility as well, on top of a lot of other things. And if somebody sends me a LinkedIn message and it's not spam oriented, I actually will respond. Yeah. I've actually had maybe a handful of people say, Mark, when are you available? Sunday afternoon, let's do it. If you're willing to work on Sunday, so am I. And I get inspired by that. But it always comes down to, man, I would have never imagined that you would have been responsive in that way. I was like, because people were helpful to me in that way too.
It's paying it forward. Yeah, so I went through a little bit of guilt over the years when I started to get really busy and pull in a lot of different directions that I didn't have the time that I wanted to have. So I, being very deliberate, I operationalized it. And so your viewers can go on my LinkedIn, right underneath my name and photo, it says book an appointment.
Book an appointment. That's right. There's a fixture out there now.
Book an appointment. Yeah. And every day, Thursday through Friday, 15 minutes, there are all these slots over there in the afternoons. You can sign up for it, and if you if it's something urgent, you can't wait for the next opening. I also have a Disney Fast Pass in there because in my early days, shit, yeah, I would have bought a Disney Fast Pass to get even ahead of the line, to meet with various entrepreneurs. So that's out there, which I'm super thrilled about because it gives me every day, at least one, some days two, it depends on how my calendar looks like, 15-minute phone calls with oftentimes total strangers who I've never met.
Yeah.
And I basically answer the phone or call them up and say, hey, Mark, what are you working on? Tell me all about it. And they just go. And I just start giving them ideas. And then I went a step further and I took that same Calendly link on my appointment. And then down inside the paragraph, I have a link now to a Google Doc. It's public facing document that has what I would call the best practices or more. It's more like a fact sheet, the Q&A.
Sure.
It's like often the answer that I give to the questions that I give over and over again.
Right.
So if someone is
The
really,
patterns, you identify
right.
the patterns.
So if somebody is really industrious, they can not only sign up for the 15 minutes, but then they can go through 4 pages of what I've said before, so they can skip all that.
Absolutely.
And they can just go into like the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
And I can always tell who went through the sheet because they're like, so when you were doing, or when you were doing, like, what did you do to, or in my case, I need to, I always love that. Now, if you get me for 15 minutes, you just want to talk about your idea and you don't even give me a chance to respond, okay.
Okay, right.
That's a technique,
Yeah, that's a technique.
You just,
I know what that means.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm like, okay. So then the other thing that I'm
That's a
actually launching this weekend, so we're taping on the 21st November.
is this a spoiler alert?
No, this is like an announcement, I guess. So I've partnered with a group called Leaderly AI. So for a whole new cohort, whole new generation of learners, because they grew up with this phone in their hand, they love learning in micro lessons. Waiting for the car, walking their dog, on the subway. And so what Leaderly AI did was they built a whole curriculum of leadership 101, if you will. And because unfortunately, too many schools don't teach leadership, too many companies don't invest in their people. And so they've really taken off. But they've added in a new layer to kind of, it's just a cool new layer of what they've done. So they've approached people like me that have written a book, for instance, Catalyst, and they've ingested my book. And then through all these cool AI tools, they've broken my book down into micro-learning. So the book is Catalyst, Leadership and Strategy in a Changing World. So it's the book in micro-lessons, and it has tools to allow for engagement. So occasionally, after we launch it, I'll be able to get on and engage with different people, answer different questions, have webinars, have live sessions, plus all of the Leadership 101 that they've already created. So if
That's
you're
amazing.
If you're 17-year-old Joseph Kopser, and there's a platform, in this case we call it Catalyst 365 because you'll be able to, it's in your pocket, it's in your phone, work on it anytime you want, to be able to access the very people who, when I was a kid, like when I got to meet some business leaders occasionally, I was like, and then that was it. I wouldn't see anybody for weeks or months. This is a really cool platform as technology is improving and making accessibility even better, that they can now go beyond just the 15 minutes with me on the phone, but have weeks, lessons, plans, quizzes, months. I mean, so it's kind of an opportunity for you to find whatever leader type you gravitate towards. And if there's folks that are, in my case, civic-minded or entrepreneurial nature, or just hungry to build things and fix things, that's who I think might gravitate to Catalyst 365. I wrote it with Brett Boyd, who I think you know Brett Boyd, CEO of Sustainment. Yeah,
he's doing very
very
good
well.
things.
Sustainment's taken off, and so we partnered together to write this book, Catalyst. And so when you combine Catalyst with Leadership 101, it's much of what I talk about anyway. So people can
speaking
now
of, we need to get. I'm looking at Josh. We need to get Brett out here too.
Yeah,
he's been here once or twice, but I've been meaning to reach out to him to check in because he's done a lot of great things, and I think that's part of, you mentioned earlier entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And the inherent qualities of an entrepreneur. Expand upon that because you said it very eloquently that it's not just the templated, checklist of now you qualify yourself as an entrepreneur. It goes bigger than that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, my definition of entrepreneurship or of an entrepreneur is someone who is going to fix the problem, their own problem, 9 out of 10 times, before they wait for someone else to do it for themselves. In other words, when you see a problem, go and fix it. I mean, that's what Mrs. Grievous, my 6th grade teacher, honestly, in the 1980s.
The fact that you remember that, man, that's amazing.
Audrey Grievous. Google her. Joseph Kopser, Audrey Grievous. She was such an outsized impact in my life. So I had her as a teacher in the 80s, 6th grade teacher. But in the 50s and 60s, she was a civil rights icon.
Oh.
So much so.
Oh, wow.
Like she was the one that would chain herself to the counter to demand to be served. She was that level of badass.
Like Sandra Bullock in, I forget what that movie,
She was badass. So you fast forward the clock, they later named a school after her in Lexington, Kentucky. She was that legendary. Wow. So what I remember most about her is, why are you waiting for someone else to fix your problems? And in her case, civil rights, she wasn't going to wait for government to fix her problems. She was going to take action as a civil rights activist and icon. And so to have inspiration like that, to have mentors and role models like that in my life, that kind of builds on one and builds on the other.
And so, one of the things that now that I've always been a student of entrepreneurship, especially in the military. My family, I tell, to use Craig's, have a pitch for when you get out of the military. What's your standard pitch? One of them was, I'm a 3rd generation entrepreneur. But what I found in actually getting into this space is that the qualities of entrepreneurship at large are very similar to those that have served.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of unknowns. There's a higher call potentially to serve or to solve.
So I'll dig even deeper. One of the great traits, many, but one of the ones that I think is most notable to your point is that founders, entrepreneurs, and service members, military folks of all kinds, we are quite comfortable in the uncomfortable. We are quite comfortable in the chaos, meaning we know there's no template. When you drop us off in the sands of Iraq or on the hillsides of mountains in Afghanistan or in the deep waters of the Atlantic, we don't know the answer. Go figure it out,
That's
Ranger.
Right. But you're reliant on some foundations that you
your
have.
Training,
That's exactly
your
right.
teamwork, your self-confidence, the doctrine. I mean, yes, that is such a great point too, because for folks who are trying to build their company, they have to rely on much of that training that came before them. And hopefully they're just naturally curious as well.
That's a great trait. Absolutely have to be.
Yeah.
I think what you were looking for, coming back to the training and the drive when you were at UT, you were looking for that framework to sit and audit that class, pick up the vernacular. This is a whole lot.
I had to figure out what the hell EBITDA was. Still don't know what EBITDA is.
That's quite frankly, I said I knew I needed to thrust myself, and one of the best places here is Capital Factory, right? To be able to find, and again, if you don't know, you're gonna figure it out, but then go do it. Launch. You have to get in the game. You have to go
I
out.
always tell, as often as I can, founders that have got these ideas and they're building a website or they're building an app. I'm like, whoa. Why don't you just go do it? They're like, what do you mean? And my favorite example that I use is a couple of years ago, I was in a session coaching these 2 young, they have to be UT students, and they had this idea. And they were building an app, a very elaborate website to match people in Dallas and Houston who were students attending the University of Texas in the case of situations where they forgot something at home. Okay, so that's a pain point. You're in Dallas, you're coming back for the semester, and you forgot your favorite whoopee, your favorite pillow, your laptop.
Tell everybody what a whoopee is. You got to...
your little blanket, whatever it is. Oh, yeah, that's Mr. Mom. That's an old movie reference in there. Yeah, your whoopee. Anyway, but they wanted to build an app, development hours and coding to be able to build a platform to do that. And I was like, guys, time out. First, let's just validate the business model, see how big this market is. Why don't you plaster on every paper bulletin board in every dorm in Texas and say, did you forget something? Call us. We'll get it back, and have those old-fashioned little tabs, with the phone number.
Yeah,
just pull
that's
off.
right. Yeah.
I wasn't even asking them to do a QR code. Just pull this off. Anyway,
What did you forget, right?
what'd you forget? Well, to my knowledge, that company has never launched because I think they figured out pretty quickly that the total addressable market for that need is so small. It's not a company, it's a favor. Like, you just have to call your mom, tell her to go down to the post office box or Greyhound. I even told them, I was like, work out a partnership with Greyhound. Have people go to the Greyhound station. Greyhound goes, drops it off. But anyway.
Well, there's so many spinoffs. Like last night, people do forget. Check. I think there's an Aussie that forgot his bag, went to 5 blocks down the road, and he's texting me, "Hey man, I forgot. Do you have the ability to bring me that bag? Or I can call Uber for a little micro task of some sort." So
I did that once in San Francisco. I spoke at an event about 10 years ago, left my credit card at the bar of the hotel the night before. May have stayed too late. I'm now all the way at SFO at the airport. I'm about midway there, and then I realize, oh crap. I have left my credit card. I can't turn around and go back and get it. So I immediately dialed up the hotel, said I was in the hotel bar last night. They managed to find it. It was in the safe, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm arriving at SFO. And again, back to entrepreneurship. I'm going to fix this problem. I'm not going to just say, oh, crap, I'll never get my credit card. I'm going to figure out a way. So they confirmed that they had it. I said, can you put it in an envelope and write my name on it? And they did. I said, leave it at the front desk. And they did. Then I dialed up a Lyft driver, dialed a Lyft from my hotel to SFO. They showed up. As soon as they said, your driver's ready. Now I'm already at SFO. I'm getting ready to go through security. I said, hi, I'm not really there. This is before Uber delivery and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not really there.
Game the system.
But if you go in to the front desk, there will be an envelope that says Joseph Kopser. And if you will just drive that envelope, I will meet you at the front and then go in. Guy's like, okay, sounds pretty weird, but here we go. So he does, and he drives. And I'm tracking my credit card the whole way. Then I'm now so close to my flight taking off because traffic and everything else, he's got kind of held up. So I have to go through security to be closer.
Oh, man.
Now my app on my phone is telling me your flight is boarding. And I'm like, oh, no. So I go to the gate and I say, here's the situation. There's going to be a Lyft driver show up there at the front. I can't get back through security and back in time. Is there any way you can use your radio to call any of your folks that are on the other side of security to receive that envelope? And if you just ask nicely, if you just are authentic and at their mercy, and sure enough, she got her little thing, and then she's like, okay, go down to security, and lo and behold, somebody on the far side of security got it with her little special tab, and whoop, went right through TSA super fast, handed it to me, and I did a freaking run through the airport, and last person to board, but I got on. And that's, in some ways, entrepreneurship. So for your viewers, if that's the way you think about life, rather than just, oh, I love my credit card, that sucks, I have to cancel it and I have to get a new one, da-da-da. But no, if you really want your credit card, if you really want to solve that problem, and you're industrious enough and polite enough, you'll be able to get it done.
That story right there is the definition. I'm going to tell my sons and my daughter to listen to this, because I always say, work the problem, don't let the problem work you.
Of course.
And that is the sheer
You
definition.
either going to solve your problems or you are going to be the victim.
That's
and I just can't go through life. I know people do.
Yeah, that's not me.
I don't know what victimhood is.
I don't.
I mean, from the time I was a kid, we talked, before we started taping, about my first business, my lawn mowing business, when I was cutting the hedge, and I ended up cutting the cord on my brand new Walkman's headphones.
If only that had not happened, you would have been the next NVIDIA, right?
Yeah, right. But the cool part is I accepted that mistake. That was me. I owned it. Now, I also put those two little wires together.
That's exactly right.
Taped it up with electrical tape. It didn't look very cool anymore, but it worked. And that kind of ability or innate instinct. Maybe that's the word. But it was beat into me by my grandfather. Like I say, the one that was the machinist that ran the plant, that moved from IBM in New York to IBM in Kentucky. It was just beat into me as a kid. Go fix your problem. Mrs. Grievous. Don't wait on others. So.
What are you doing now that, and you're doing a lot of things that, like, you're helping veterans out. And I don't know if you really want to expand upon what you're doing or how you've had a lot of success in the entrepreneurial space. You had an exit. I know you at some point wanted to even take on a higher call to service.
Yeah,
you
ran for Congress.
Yeah. But you're giving back, and you continually give back. But really in the veteran space, what are you doing there?
Yeah, so my proudest, or I don't even know if proud is the right word. The thing I enjoy most is a better way to phrase, is what we're doing now with a new organization that I helped co-found called Leading to Win. So Leading to Win had been around. It was a conference started by Jason Kelly and some folks at IBM, ironically, Mike Garlington, Brian Cook, and others.
Jason does a lot for this community too.
He does. Fabulous guy. Handsome bald guy. I like these handsome bald guys.
He's a West Point football player, right?
Yeah, he was. But what was neat about the organization,
do you want me to edit that out or leave that in?
No, go right ahead. And so when you've got all of these veteran groups, and unfortunately there's too many in America, there's 40,000 of them. We set out with Leading to Win not to build another product or service, but to convene. And that's what I love most about what we're doing with Leading to Win is I do a lot of work in the dual-use innovation space, helping companies connect to DoD and defense, national security opportunities, and veterans, pound for pound, ounce for ounce, understand that space. So I work with them quite a bit in that genre. But then I also like working with the Joseph Kopser of 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The guy who thought he had an idea, or the woman who knew she could build it if she just had the language or the doctrine of business. Or, as we've said a few times in this conversation, since people will be what they can see, I love convening groups and opportunities to be able to do it. And so the MCM3, the Military Connected Monthly Mentorship Meetup, that is a chance for veterans who think they have an idea, who need to meet other vets, like I had Dr. Johnny Butler to show me the way at UT, to be able to find other vets who are farther along in their journey as a business owner or an entrepreneur or a franchise owner, to be able to just answer those questions. Ask the really dumb questions in a place
There's
where,
no such thing. I tell folks, like, there's no dumb question in that way.
I mean, I'm going to make fun of you if it's a really dumb question, but I'm going to answer.
I didn't say that was there's consequence to ask.
But I'm going to answer your question, just like on that sheet I have on my LinkedIn when you click book an appointment. Like, I've already put like 4 pages of answers to those questions. But I like formalizing that. And so for me, it started with Bunker Labs, which was the very first thing. It was out of Chicago in 2014. Ride Scout, Craig and I were in cohort number 1. We're also the first veteran-owned business in Bunker Labs to go through an exit. We got acquired by Mercedes-Benz. And so for me, it was
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Oh, it was a lot of fun.
That's great.
And right here in the same building, just down the hallway, we set up the very first Bunker Labs outside of Chicago in Austin, Texas.
That's amazing.
Jonathan Watwitz, Sabrina Watwitz, a Marine, and his wife, and Blake Hogan, another Marine, helped us build it on it was a little white folding table, because at that point in Ride Scout we didn't have any office, any furniture. And that was where the first Bunker Labs Austin meeting was, to help veteran entrepreneurship kind of get it start here in Austin. Blake Hogan went on to become the CEO nationally for Bunker Labs, which is another cool thing about Austin, that we just keep attracting this talent and they keep going to the higher levels.
So let's talk about that. Let's dig deep. I mean, we're in the Texas Embassy. This is the Texas Embassy podcast.
By the way, very cool name for what you're doing.
Thanks.
I like it.
Let's talk about Texas. What's going on here? What's going on in Austin now that you have seen and others are starting to be more aware of in that way?
So I think Austin's success recently with business and entrepreneurship can be best described by the way that Willie Nelson described Austin and why he chose to leave Nashville, move here, and stay here in the late 60s, early 70s, all the way up until now. And by the way, pray for Willie. We still got him.
We still do.
We still got him, but pray for Willie.
Yeah.
Willie Nelson said about Austin, it's where the cowboys and the hippies can get along. And that describes...
Can have a beer.
There it is.
Can have a beer. Cheers.
Cheers to Willie.
Cheers.
And the reason why that's important for growing businesses is you need all kinds of people. You need people with money, but you need people with wild ideas. And you need people like Katie Seiler, one of the early teammates at Ride Scout, who was very driven. Joseph, come here. Let's take your 20 ideas you have and let's be a little more methodical about how we're going to do it. And Austin is great in the sense that we have a wide range of talent of all levels. And you referred to this earlier, Austin is very open and you know, no jerks. I mean, don't be a jerk. I mean, if you're going to come here, be willing to share and play well with others. And if you're going to be a jerk, there's probably lots of other places that you can go. And then the other neat thing about Texas, and this goes back to the earliest days when nobody was here. I mean, the folks that first got here thousands of years ago loved the year-round great climate, loved the nature and loved the beauty and the natural resources. And then as more and more folks came up from Mexico and they enjoyed Texas, and then as more and more folks came in from Europe and here and there, and then when you get into the early colonial, 1700s of the U.S., anytime anybody got in debt, got somebody pregnant, got in trouble with the law, whatever they had to run from, they found themselves in Texas. And that spirit developed into what later became the wildcatters, in my opinion. And those early wildcatters in the oil industry were the people crazy enough to try to dig down, find oil, and then if they got a dry hole, build another drill. And then if they went bankrupt, scrape together the money, convince others to invest them again. And that spirit of immigration, that spirit of wildcatters, that spirit of Willie Nelson, cowboys and hippies getting together, that is the success of Austin, and that is the success of Texas. Now, if we can only keep our divided politics out of that, we'll be much better. But, I mean, I love it.
Yeah, that's the thing that, when you mention politics, my dad served, I served. We're not a very political family. We have our beliefs, but even during service, we serve the Constitution.
Yeah.
But now that I am out, and I think it's also the time frame, man, is politics everywhere. And that's almost the leading qualifier for anybody. I mean, somebody in this, in our office who was not from the United States, that was the first thing that he asked me, was like, what party are you? And I was like, whoa. Yep. He's like, but we're so intrigued because it's out there even more so in that space. Do you see that being a barrier here in Texas in 100%. Any way?
So another project, so I do work a lot with veterans and entrepreneurship, and thank you for asking about that. And that is at Leading to Win, and a lot of stuff we do there. But I have another organization I created called U.S. Tomorrow. And my belief is that if we can work together, we'll have a much better U.S. tomorrow, hence the name. I also didn't realize, and in the branding of that it's also us. U.S. is also us tomorrow. So early on, people...
I like that.
Yeah. Early on, people will be like, hey, I like your us tomorrow letters. And I'm like, oh, I never thought of it. Well, thank you very much. It is also cool. Us tomorrow. So it's both the U.S. and it is us tomorrow. And one of the things that I caution often in my newsletters, which you can find on Substack, shameless plug.
That's okay. We'll put it on the link.
There you go. Please do. For U.S. Tomorrow, I try to remind people that we have far more in common than that what divides us.
Absolutely.
And I have so much fun watching Politico types, especially the ones that are just about the rhetoric and about the politics of division, less about the actual substance and policy. And when those of the rhetoric, and I'll call them pundits, or their chief mission is to divide, to watch them wrap themselves in a knot when they very clearly know in their heart that what they're talking about is not supported by the facts, but they're going along with a political ideology, or they're going on a political mess. My two favorite examples on both sides of the aisle right now, or the Democratic Party, people are talking about, Mondani winning the race in New York City, and we got to be more socialist.
He's going to the White House.
Yeah, he's going to the White House and all that stuff. I try to remind them, that's just what the news wants you to focus on. But Abigail Spanberger, CIA officer, is now in Virginia is the governor-elect, a moderate centrist Democrat. Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey, a former Navy officer, is the governor-elect of New Jersey. The senator from Michigan, I could go on and on and on, are military veteran, national security veterans. They are the future of the Democratic Party, not the Democratic Socialists that the news just love to grab onto because it clicks sell and clickbait and all that. And on the Republican side, I can be equally critical of what they're doing too because, here in the state of Texas, we have an unbelievable booming energy economy right now, built on the legacy of oil and gas, but now complemented by solar, wind, and battery storage. Not to nerd out too much, but check out Doug Lewin and what he does on Substack also with his energy podcast. And he loves to point out that we are now more energy sure, more energy reliant or resilient, better word, now than we ever have been. Certainly since that freeze 4 years ago when all of our pipes bust and all that, Snowmageddon and all that. And the reason why is we have wind, solar, and battery storage making up for gaps that we can't get from coal or natural gas. And who was it that built the infrastructure for those transmission lines but Republican governors in the Republican legislature of the late 90s and early 2000s? And it's the modern Republicans in the legislature and in the Capitol and in the governor's office who are trying to push back and say that windmills kill birds and all. It's like the very party that built this energy economy, is now trying to run from it. And over on the Democratic side, the very folks that are winning centrist seats and governorships are being ignored, if you will, by the flash and the allure of a Democratic socialist. I'm like, folks, just move closer to the center. That's where the majority of Americans are. We want good jobs, good education, and want a better future for our kids. And that's what I love working on with not only U.S. Tomorrow, but the other policy stuff that I do.
I actually really like that you, as a veteran, and I think that there's more veterans, if we look at the tragedy of going to war, but it is an opportunity for those to get in the game and understand a higher degree of selfless service. But now you're seeing that they're wanting to continue to serve and they're joining they're getting into the race for politics.
On both sides of the aisle.
On both sides of the aisle. I'm happy about that.
Very happy.
I am extremely happy about that. I think that gives me the confidence to know the level of tragedy of their decisions that they make. Right?
Yeah. The other thing is
not in a horrific way, but there are consequences.
So right now in our U.S. Congress, the 435 members of the House and the 100 senators we are at an all-time low for the number of sons and daughters of members of Congress who serve in our military. And I believe that detachment from the realities and the horrors of war make it easier for them to make, let's say, less informed decisions because it's not their kids going off to war, it's somebody else's kids. Right. And that's what we need to fix.
Yeah. Look, Joseph, I really appreciate the time. Is there anything else that you want to cover that we might have missed in this opportunity? I think it's definitely a comeback. It's a comeback for sure.
We talked about veteran work. We talked about policy. Oh, here we go. So I'm drinking a Starbase beer, Lucky Launch the Day Lager, because in celebration of a new entity that I've helped co-found, which is SWIFT, which is the Space Workforce Incubator for Texas. So as an aerospace engineer, I love rockets and rocket science, but I am also at heart a business person who knows that in creating jobs, the jobs we need the most in this growing Texas space industry are the actual technicians to build the rocket,
big time.
The electricians to run the wiring, the plumbers to connect these pipes that have unbelievable amounts of pressure of gas, and the welders to make it all happen. If we don't create that bench of highly qualified technicians, our space industry is going to go, whirr. So California will grow, Florida will grow. We in Texas, if we don't fix this, we're going to be
There's actually
not living up to our
the
potential.
only startup that I know to have left Austin and even Texas was to get near the aeronautical
Yep.
talent, which
Yep.
was it kills me to say it, but let's just say the last state out west.
Yep.
In that way,
Yep.
I agree with you. We definitely need to look at the base, the workforce, and growing in that way. So, what does Swift do?
Our origins are with Dr. Leon Vanstone, who at the University of Texas helped create the Texas Rocket Engineering Lab. But the University of Texas over time evolved, and they wanted to be more on the academic side and less the actual job training, job placement, job creation. Which is fine. It was their decision. But Dr. Leon Vanstone, when he left, also later on, Sandy Barker, who is one of the longest serving executive directors, they wanted to do more with what they learned about a curriculum, hands-on curriculum. Like, let's go out to a test stand with Firefly Aerospace that landed on the moon, by the way. Firefly Aerospace right here in Central Texas. And let's let these kids, experiment with building a rocket, turning the wrench, flipping the switch and watching it go out the back.
Or not. And then learning from it, right?
Or it
and then
goes,
learning, that's right.
boom.
And doing it again.
But that hands-on experience is what industry wants. And so he took that model, created Swift, and I'm proud to be a co-founder to help them build that. And now we're finding partners all across the state to be able to create that workforce for the 21st century.
That's amazing. I know Swift, and you're building the team out. You guys are making a great noise, and we'll make sure we include that.
Yeah, the second Thursday of every month, we have an event called Ecosystem Space. So whether you're blue collar, white collar, or no collar, when it comes to being interested in the space industry, check it out on our website, which is swiftrocket.org. And if I got that wrong, I apologize.
What's next for you? I mean, you're nonstop. You're nonstop. I'm sure you have like 5 other things that we didn't make it onto this call.
Okay, so here's the thing I'm working on. And if any of your viewers want to help me with this.
Throw the challenge out.
Oh, here it is. No. Well, we're putting it out right now. The next company I want to build or help partner in building is to take all of this content that folks like me have created. So I'm not just a public speaker and a writer, but I am constantly putting out content, and I am keeping all of my stuff. So it comes from a book I read years and years ago that Patton, when he was a young kid reading books, would always write in the columns, the white space of his books. An idea would occur to him, he'd write it down right there. So I, in turn, starting in college, started writing down ideas and things I was working on in these little green books. And I kept them. And then I kept more green books and more green books and more green books. And I have stacks of green books. And then when we started to move into Microsoft Office, and we had these PST files with all of our emails, all of our notes, all of our calendars, I kept them too. And I have CD-ROMs full of PST files. And then Google came along and said, well, we'll do free Gmail, and you'll have all the emails you've ever sent. Plus, about 15 years ago, I started writing and blogging, then interviews. Then here's what I'm getting at. I've got a digital or paper version of almost everything I've worked on for years. What I want to do is figure out different ways to make, whether it be a small language model, instead of a large language model, focused specifically on all the content that I've built, so that the next time somebody comes along and says, Joseph, can you connect me with somebody who's working on A, B, or C? It doesn't have to rely on access to me or getting on my calendar, but you're going to be able to tap into all the coaches, teachers, mentors, colleagues, friends, all along the path. That is powerful.
That reminds me, and I forget the movie, but where you're digitizing yourself.
In some ways,
way,
it kind of
right?
like
That you're leaving the legacy. Like you, I have libraries of when I was in the Pentagon. It was like first year, second year, third year, fourth year. And whether it would be notes or anything, it's all assembled there. And very much like you, I now am talking to the ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah.
Every single day. And, in hopes that I'm digitizing any kind of free flow thoughts in that way to maybe my grandkids or their grandkids will be able to tap into, hey, Marco Cervantes, can I have a conversation with him in some capacity?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I think that there's plenty of companies out there that absolutely should connect with you.
And the business model is for those groups that want to connect, and I can turn it into a sure, let's share in this experience. That's like the business. So it's not just like a fun, happy walk down memory lane. No, I believe I can help other companies because I've been there, done that,
Right.
and I want to reconnect them to others who are in their field. And then at the end of the day, where I plan to, keep the light on and pay the bills and pay for more vacations in the future is paid public speaking. I just love it. I love going into groups, stages, audiences, like I say, retreats, off-sites, board meetings, and just sharing these stories and doing it in a way that combines two things that don't often get combined. So there's a lot of public speakers that are really good public speakers. And there are a lot of people that have been there, done that with some really amazing life experiences. But some of these people can't tell a story. And some of these people don't have a story worth telling that anybody wants to listen to. And so what I love doing is combining the ability to tell a story with life experiences that I still pinch myself, wonder how I was in the room where it happened, but I was. And to be able to combine those and then share it with audiences, it's a lot of fun.
The best part is you're still building those stories.
Yes.
You're still meeting people that have those stories. So
Yes.
yeah, that's another. We'll throw that in there too. Just you're worth paying to bring so that to share, and whether it be here in Texas or even abroad. I think we have to scale you.
Yeah, there you go.
We
I'm down for that. Let's do that.
well, there's a cloning. I think that's another call for.
We'll work on it next.
Been an honor to have you here, man. Really, from one vet
Thanks
to the
a lot.
other. Keep
And
doing
I love
what
what you
you're
guys
doing.
do in a Q branch, especially branding it as Texas Embassy.